Everybody, my name is Cam McCormick. I am the president of the Edmonton String Players Association. On behalf of the Music Enrichment Program, welcome to our year-end recital. All of our players are really excited to be here and to perform for you, family and friends and grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody. I'm going to start. I saw some musicians show up a little late here. Please, go off to the side or something and get yourselves tuned up because we want to keep everybody going because I'm sure everybody wants to get out here as soon as they can so they can watch the others. If you didn't notice, we have some amazing volunteers who organized a silent auction up front that helps offset some of our costs. Take a look, there's some amazing things. I saw some Murderhawks tickets, I saw some museum stuff, I saw Lego. Who doesn't love Lego? So go take a look. We're going to have an intermission, so you can feed along down there and take a look. The intermission should be about 30 minutes when we get to that point. This organization is run by volunteers. And it's people that are passionate about their kids' music or about the adults who picked up their instruments after years. We can't do this without volunteers. And what that means is a whole bunch of board members to make this organization go are about to step down because they've turned out. If you're interested and have the wherewithal, we could always use some help. If you're interested in volunteering, run for the board. We have our AGM on the 31st at the church that we usually practice at 10 a.m. So that's next weekend. So definitely, if you're interested and want to be a part of something bigger and give back to these amazing musicians, please consider doing that. I want you folks to please give a great big welcome for Orchestra 1 and their absolutely amazing conductor. while the orchestra is doing a little bit of rearranging, I see a couple of private instructors, and I want to acknowledge all of you parents and whoever's bringing these kids out and taking them diligently to their orchestra practices and to those instructors, and it takes a lot. I'm a parent, I've got a child in orchestra, and I've got a child in fiddlist. It takes a lot, and I want to acknowledge you from the board, because really this is important stuff, and as you can tell, it pays rewards. So again, thank you.
Dragonhunter and Dragonhunter. Thank you.
about different bowing styles. Night Shift by Richard Meyer. experimental things this year. This is one of them coming up. It's called the Lambert Concerto, written by a person named Brian Krinke that our one of our Viola friends knows, met him in Colorado. And a concerto means that there's an orchestra and a solo part. Well, rather than just get one person, we've got these lovely volunteers. However, we don't know how the acoustics will be here. We have no clue. It's because we've never had a chance to play this far away, this kind of configuration, but here it goes. We're only playing the first movement. slow, very meditative. It was written in 1912 by a composer who had just been silenced by the Russian government. So this was kind of towards the end of his composing, and then he just kind of quit doing sacred music and only did secular music. But this is called Salvation Created, for those of you who are interested. It's based on Psalm 74, verse 12. It's hard for us to play in here because we're sitting in kind of a different configuration, but also the farther you are away from the conductor, like me, then it's harder for me and them to communicate, and that's really what this is about. It's communication through, I might have made this work, so I hope not. The next piece that we're going to do is called a Grand Affair. It's by a Toronto composer, R. Scott Whittington, and he made it, he tried to demonstrate classical style. So although this is not high note or anything, it's in that style, and it is, well, you will see what it is. We're playing different dynamic levels, and then we have a cadenza. Cadenza is, will be played by Miriam and Milne. A cadenza is something that, what shall we call it? It extends a particular note and does some changing and things, and then it'll turn up again. So this is Grand Affair in style of pipe. in your program it says next should be Viva Violas, but it's not. It's going to be basically Bluegrass first, and then Viva Violas second. And in both pieces, we're featuring certain sections. So in basically Bluegrass, we have 2 graduating students, Laurel and McKenna. Are you so funny about me? Okay, I'm going to go help. We are going to feature them playing a tune that's Buffalo Bells, is an older tune, and accompanied by the rest of the orchestra.
Sorry, this is important because I'm a bass player and because she's doesn't want her last experience to be fighting with the bass.
So as I said, there'll be 2 solos, Laurel and McKenna, and then the rest of the orchestra, and Gavin and Evan are going to do a slapping bass thing. Okay, well, the last piece is Viva Violas, and it features the violas. But we're just not sure how to do this. What do you want to do? Do you want to hear it? Okay, they are going to ascend up there. Our problem here is we don't have the right space. The pews aren't movable, we can't do much about it. And we don't have a sound system that we can. We're doing the best we can. These three students, three violas, two of whom are graduating on, have worked very, very hard. And they've had help from Sarah Whitman, violas, they've had help from Miriam Ferguson, violas, and then Krinke. And I've told them, all of these students, and I am so proud and so grateful for all their work. I'm sure sometimes, they're like, not again. But I said to them, my job is to improve you, to make you better. Not just like, I'm so. No. And we have improved tremendously this year. I am so, so proud and so grateful for the orchestra.
We don't know what's going to happen in terms of Phillips, so here we go.
take a 20-minute intermission. Next up in our program, we have the incomparable Miriam Ferguson again, and the adult ensemble. These folks are absolutely amazing. It's some adults who picked up an instrument, maybe for the first time, or maybe the first time this millennium, which is also amazing. And they're practicing really, really hard, and they sound absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the adults.
voice, and we can have a voice in each of the sections. And you'll notice the melody passes around. So it's not just a showcase of these amazing violinists, it's also a showcase of our section. So I'd like to say thank you to Jared for all the work he put into arranging this.
Okay, last but most certainly not least, you guys got a preview of them. Jared Albright and the Phillips. Keep it up, please.
Well, thank you so much. So this is my pride and joy, the fiddleinists. We're going to start off with an unaccompanied one. It was, or it is, I guess, a Shetlandic folk tune. It has words, but none of us are good at singing in Norwegian. So we're just going to play it instead. It was brought to us from Dan Gervais by way of the Danish String Quartet. So I hope you enjoy. We're going to do you a swing tune now. It is written from all places from Russia by a man named Joe Myro. He was like a film scorer back in the 40s and 50s. So this tune is called Blue Dragon.
So this song is followed by Wagner's Reel, which is in the same key, but a different key or a different time signature. So there'll be a shift, as you will see. We've enjoyed learning these songs, so I hope you enjoyed